No, but both of them are good. Which one's better? Huh? You think this one, being poor and patient? Okay. Aisha's actually right. Aisha's right. Being poor and patient is what he thinks is the preferred state. And we'll talk about why. So, which is better? In general, for him, he says that without going into too many details, it's actually better to be poor. And there are a number of reasons that he mentions that, and there are a number of reasons he talks about it. And he said that, so some scholars, they might utilize examples of Abdurrahman ibn Auf. Abdurrahman ibn Auf, what do we know about him? Right, he was the wealthiest companion, right? He's known to be extremely wealthy, extremely generous, extremely pious. So some scholars respond, they're like, okay, well, what about Abdurrahman ibn Auf, right? If you're saying that being it's better to be poor, then what about this example? And what he does now is that he goes into Harith Muhasabi's discussion on faqr, right? Harith Muhasabi's discussion on poverty, and why he's like, what he says is enough. What he says is enough, and it's something that I think is important to present. And he starts off saying that Imam Harith al-Muhasabi is somebody who's known to be very pious. He is very strong in the Sufi tradition in talking about ideas around taqwa, ideas around poverty, ideas around starvation, what an individual should do to draw near and to help him draw near to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what does he say? So he starts this off talking about this is a discussion of the evil scholars, right? So he talks to the ulama as-su. It's already getting interesting, right? So he talks to ulama as-su, and he talks about some of their characteristics. He starts off with this discussion. He starts off with this narration. So Isa alayhi salam, he said, "O evil scholars." So who is Isa alayhi salam talking to? Obviously the evil scholars, but you know. And I'm only mentioning this because I want to give some context. And when we get to the end of the discussion of this chapter, it's something that's really important to kind of give us context on what is going on, what is happening. Because as we continue through, he's just going to continuously bash this idea of wealth, right? And it's just going to be continuous. So I want to make sure that we understand who the audience is and what it is that he's talking about, so that we don't completely, blow this out of proportion. So here, what is he saying? He says, "O evil scholars," and who was Isa alayhi salam sent to? He was sent to the Jews, right? He was sent to the Jews. He was sent to Bani Israel. And what was some of the issues that they were having that Isa alayhi salam's, it was needed that he be sent? Why did he need to be sent? Why are prophets sent?
To deliver them
from misguidance.
Because they were harassed by Farhan.
Okay, no, this is Isa. That was Musa, right? So for Isa alayhi salam,
Maryam.
yeah. Why was he sent? What was happening? Why did Allah feel that there was a need now is an appropriate time to send a prophet or a messenger? Okay, they were getting misguided by who? The Romans? Outside forces? What was going on? The problem's with them, right? The problem wasn't like outside forces. The problems were the rabbis and the manas and the rules themselves. What were they doing? They were changing Allah's laws. Why? Why were they changing it? For what benefit? Huh? Okay, but what kind of benefit were they getting? Ahsant. They were getting money, right? They were getting wealth. They were getting money by changing the rules of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How were they benefiting? They're benefiting financially. So now, do we understand who he's addressing? Yeah. And do we understand that when he means evil scholars, why are they evil? Why are they ulama as-su?
They changed the law.
Okay, they changed the law. For what? For wealth. Meaning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He describes them. That they say, يَشْتَرُونَ حَيَاةَ الدُّنْيا, right? They purchase this world. And how do they purchase it? By selling their what? Their deen, right? They sell their religion. So over here, these are the people who he's talking about. And he says to them, he says, "O evil scholars, you fast, you pray, you give charity, you do not do what you order others to do, and teach what you do not act on. Evil is what you order and seek forgiveness with false hope. Meaning that it's just a show. Right? Even this forgiveness that you seek is just a show. You act on your desires. There's no benefit in cleaning your bodies and hearts from its impurities. And it's so disgusting. It's so filthy that don't even bother and don't even waste your time by doing these actions. I tell you in truth, do not be like the sieve. The sieve is like, it's like a filter that allows the fine purities to pass through it, but it collects impurities in itself. It means like he's describing them as the filter. He's not describing them as the filtered, right? He's describing themselves as the filter itself. So when you make coffee, what stays in the coffee filter? The grounds, right? The grounds. That he's saying that's you. He's saying that is you. Similarly, rulings leave your tongues and malice stays in your heart. Meaning that it's just all, it's all tongue, right? It's just all talk. There's no actual substance to what it is that you're saying. Slaves of this world, how can you achieve the next world when your hearts are tied to this one, unable to cut their ties to it? And you just love this world so much that there's no way that you will ever be successful. I tell you in truth, your hearts cry over your actions, and you've placed this world under your tongues and your actions at your feet, meaning that you're dismissive of your actions, right? You just, again, it's just word. I tell you in truth, you've ruined your afterlife for the benefits of this world, and there are more beloved than the benefits of the next. Who do you know to be greater losers than you? Woe to you! When will you continue paving the way for ideologues, standing in for those who are themselves confused, as if you called to the people of this world to leave it for you? Think. Woe to you! What does a darkened home benefit from a lantern if he places it on the roof? What does that example mean? What does he mean by that?
You put the light over the roof.
Yeah.
It's like the inside's still dark.
The inside's still dark.
Just like
And what is he using that as an example of?
yeah, it's over here.
Is he using the example of the heart? The house is the what?
Your heart.
Is your heart, right? The house is the heart, and the roof is all, because the outside is just for what?
Pretty.
It's just for show.
Nice and show off.
It's just to show. Similarly, the light of knowledge that comes from your mouths, while your hearts are completely distorted, worshippers of this world, you are not like the God-fearing slaves or generous freemen, as if this world is strangling you from your essence, throwing you on your faces, kicking you to the ground, taking your mistakes from the head, bearing you in knowledge until you are stripped naked, presenting you to your Lord with shortcomings and rewarding you with the worst deeds. So, pretty scathing, right? Address that he has here concerning who these evil scholars are. But it gives us an idea of what some of these problems and some of these issues are. So what are some of their characteristics? He says that these individuals are evil, they're devils among humans, they are a trial for the people. All they are doing and what their goal is to strive for status in this world and trying to raise their status. That they're replacing this for the next. In this world, they are lowly and shamed. And in the next world, they're losers unless Allah forgives them out of His bounty and His generosity. Azza wa Jal. So how do I determine who these people are? And is it necessary for me to determine who those people are? And why is he so focused on them? Why dedicate the closing chapter on condemning this world and surround it with these evil scholars? Well, they're real. Well, it's not the future, right? Because he's quoting Muhasibi. Muhasibi was actually before him. Ghazali died 505, so you're talking about a 5th century scholar. Muhasibi was a little bit before him. So this is something that's happening very early on in the Ummah, right? This is not something that is a late creation. This is something that happens very early on. And Muhasibi sees this. Imam Ghazali agrees with him in his observation. Why a focus on this though? Okay, number one is going to exist, right? And it's important to be aware of it. Why? Right, because people will, what? People are going to follow them. This is why he thinks it's such a problem. He's like, you have these evil scholars, they exist, and the problem that I'm having and the reason I'm warning you of them is that because people will follow them and people are going to listen to them. And why are they going to listen to them?
Because they make the light thing again.
Huh?
Just a light, like light. They look pretty. They say
Because what they say, what? It sounds nice. It sounds nice. And they're speaking with what? Not necessarily charisma. They're speaking with knowledge. They're actually speaking with knowledge. Right? That's the dangerous thing. That these religious heads are speaking with knowledge, but they're calling people to the wrong thing. So how do we know that? What are some signs that we can take away from this that we should look for to understand and help us on, like, how do we determine is this person calling to good or is he calling to evil?
So this is not like peers and stuff in Pakistan that are like, trying to.
Why not?
Is it?
Because essentially, what are these people doing?
Benefiting for their own.
It's self-benefit, right? So here, I think this is an important differentiation. As a Muslim, as an individual, am I allowed to seek my own self-interests?
Yeah.
Absolutely, right? If I want to buy a nice car, is there anything wrong with me buying a car?
No.
Or buying a book, or going and or eating? Is there anything wrong with me getting those things? Where does it become a problem?
When it's when it's hurting the other.
Right, when I do it at the expense of someone else, right? When I actually hurt someone else. So over here, who's being hurt?
The majority.
Right, the people. And who are these people? These are the people who take advantage of others religiously. And then what happens? They themselves benefit. So what are some ways that they are benefiting? How? Like in the modern day?
Monetarily.
Financially. So what are some things that are done that kind of enable this or allow this and allow people to be taken advantage of?
Pay for blessings.
Right. No. And paying for blessings. Right? Literally paying for blessings. They'll be like, oh, can you make dua for me? Sure, I just need you to donate X amount of money. And when you hear the word donate, what does that feel like?
You're doing
Right? So you're not just getting the benefit of the dua, you're also getting the benefit of what?
charity.
Of the charity. So it sounds beautiful, it sounds nice. And this person, he's just playing with words. So there's a financial benefit in it. Does this mean that religious or clergy cannot benefit financially? No, that's not what it means. Because he's limiting this to who? The evil scholars, right? He's not saying scholars should be poor or scholars can't benefit. He's saying that the evil scholars are the problem. And why are they essentially the problem? Because they're willing to change the deen, right? Because they are what we would call, they are sellouts. They're sellouts. And how does that manifest in the modern era? If I say certain things, it allows me to be eligible for certain grants. If I say certain things, it allows me to be eligible for certain scholarships. If I say certain things, it allows me access to people. It allows me access to money. It allows me access to organizations. And it's very easy for an individual to believe that he's right. Because is the evil scholar evil because he's just, always scheming and planning and actually evil? Maybe sometimes, right? Hey, what about the others? He actually convinces himself, right? He actually convinces himself that what he's doing is for the benefit of the religion. Like, if I don't do this, then who's going to do it? Okay, well, sometimes you have to take in a little bit of bad to do a lot of good. Sometimes you have to make compromises, and that compromise can be something that's very dangerous. But it's like, oh well, who else is going to do this? And it's interesting because he follows this section with the discussion on showing off and status. Because what causes a person to actually seek that wealth? It's for those things, right? Because of the pride, because of status, because of showing off. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us.
So this exists in all the religions, right? So did he have anything was he basing this off what existed from other?
So you missed the introductory hadith, right? So the introductory hadith was actually about Isa alayhi salam, and him addressing the rabbis. So it's not a uniquely Muslim experience, right? This is a universal experience.
This was happening saw the end before.
Yeah. So I'm saying, is it a Muslim problem? Yes, it is. Is it a uniquely Muslim problem? No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Like Muslims didn't invent spiritual blackmail. Like it's not like we didn't come up with it one day. Like, hey, we can actually benefit from religion, right? This is something that preceded Islam.
Hindus invented it.
Huh? Hindus.
You gotta blame on somebody.
Might as well blame the pagans, right? So the one afflicted by this world. So the one afflicted is. It's interesting in how he describes this person, because before he was describing the scholars, now he's talking about the layman and the person who's afflicted by this world. And he says that he does have some happiness, but that happiness is what? Right? It's tainted. And he says it's tainted with bitterness. I found that like a really interesting way of kind of looking at it. And the more he engages in this wealth and seeks this wealth, what else happens for him? There are different doors of sin actually open up to him. Right? There's sins now that because he didn't have money, he has access to, that he didn't have access to before. This ends up leading him to his destruction. The happiness that he has, it's only fleeting. And we had talked about this before. When I look for outside input for happiness, like so for example, if I want to buy a car, right? There's a car that I really like, and I go and I purchase that car. When am I happy? Right? I have either the moment I buy it or the moment immediately leading up to it. In the moment I receive it, what happens?
The happiness is
Yeah.
gone.
The happiness is gone. Why?
It just
Yes, that's true, huh?
shahwa is just
No, the desire is still there, but I'm saying like I have this car now, but I'm not happy anymore. Why? Because I want a better one, right? It just never. These external inputs, they never end, right? They never stop, and they're never going to end. And we had spoken about this before, and Ghazali talks about this, right? It's like that chase of the world and this chase of the dunya, it never ends. Why? Because the dunya essentially can never be. It can never be caught. Right? You can never catch it. You're never going to catch the dunya. Because there's always going to be something better. There's always going to be something more. Right? Once I become a millionaire, I'll want to become a billionaire. Once I become a billionaire, I want to be, yes?
But don't you think that's linked to like the human drive to want to do better? Like,
There's a difference, right? So am I chasing this money to hoard it? Am I doing it, using it because it's a means, right? And we'll talk about some of those. Like where is that drive negative? Where is that drive positive, right? Is it a problem? We also talked about previously the difference between stagnating and contentment, right? And how to determine those things, right? Because once a person is content, they want to what? They want to grow, right? But a person who stagnates, what happens? They actually end up declining. So he loses both his religion and his wealth. Somebody had a question? No? And he says, how tempting and awful is this world, and how much bitterness does it cause? And he's right. There's not happiness. It's amazing how Islam presents this paradigm of happiness being related to qana', right? Being related to contentment. And once an individual is content, they're actually happy. It never talks about seeking that happiness from the outside. It never talks about other people making you happy, right? Because it's not a fair expectation, and it's not even a realistic one. The only being I can actually make happy is who? Right? Myself, and, interestingly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Oh, I mean, it's definitely part of that. But not just that. The relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very straightforward. Right? There's no tricks. When Allah says, I'll be happy with you when you pray, He means it. Right? There's no for someone else, I'd be like, hey, listen, yeah, if you bring me a chocolate chip cookie, I'll be really happy. And then it comes and be like, oh, Chips Ahoy? Yes or no? Right? I asked for it. It's something I asked for, but when it came to me, I wasn't happy. I became very what? I became very upset. I was like, really? Like Chips Ahoy, this is the best you could do, bro? Like you couldn't go to like Whole Foods? Like I was like, there's these expectations. It's really amazing how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, his expectations are very straightforward. They're very clear. Like the things that he wants from us, the things he doesn't want from us, the things he asks from us, the things he prohibits us from. It is a very straightforward relationship without any type of underhandedness, with any type of pettiness, without any type of second meaning, right? When Allah says, I want you to pray, what does he mean? I want you to pray. When he says, I don't want you to lie, he doesn't want me to lie, right? It's not about like, I don't want you to lie about this, right? You know what I mean? Like, I heard like, it's like, well, you prayed, well, that's not really prayer, right? You know what I mean? Like, there's no pettiness. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, when we talk about his mercy, and we talk about his forgiveness, when we talk about his ability to accept maghfirah and things, like it just shows the extent of his mercy. Because he doesn't play games with us. Which is so diametrically opposed to how we deal with each other, right? Like everything we say has a second meaning, and we already have a perception. When we ask for something, we already have a perception in our mind on how that should come to us and how it should be.
And punishment.
Yeah, no, his punishment is clear.
Do this or
Yes,
you get
are you punished? There is there's no guessing, right? There's no guessing. Like, did Allah really not want me to steal? Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's no guessing there. It's very clear that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what he's asking for. It's like, did he really want me to fast? You know what I mean? Like, no, I mean, yes. The command is clear. Allah musta'an. So he says, be mindful of Allah against shaitan and his allies and the tricks they use in the companions and their wealth. So basically, what Imam Muhasibi has done here, he has given us the vehicle and how the religious people are being tricked into pursuing wealth. Because a person who isn't religious, does he care what, even if a scholar is evil, does he care what a scholar has to say? No. If a scholar can tell him, an evil scholar can tell him not to seek wealth, what is he going to do? He's still going to do it, right? He doesn't care. That group of people is completely independent of what is going on in the clerical space, like in the clergy space. So over here, Imam Muhasibi, he's actually addressing people who are religious. He's like, hey, listen, you need to be careful. Because there are people out there who will actually try to trick you. And they'll try to take advantage of you. And they might even force you, because what does the evil scholar benefit in you going and seeking money? Well, there's a benefit for him. Like what? It'll come back to him. He's like, well, you know, you allowed me to you allowed me to deal drugs. Let me hit you off, right?
I'll take care of you.
Like I'll take care of you. I'll take care of your institute. I'll take care of your, you know what I mean? Like whatever you have going, any expenses you have, I got you. I'll take care of you. The other thing, in validation, right? When he sees someone else doing it, it gives him, it reinforces what it is that he's doing. So there's a personal, like there's a financial benefit and there's like a social emotional benefit that he gets from it. So these people now, it's like, well, they trick you, and he's giving you the way that they trick you. Like, oh, well, what's the problem? There are companions who are rich. They sought money. They used to seek it, and they used to run after it. What's the problem? What's the big deal? So not only is he telling us who is doing this, but he's telling us how they're doing it as well. And again, this is just to increase that awareness and understand how people take advantage of others. Like, yes.
How do people differentiate, I mean, I guess maybe as a self-assessment, how do you know that you're not in that group of people, that you're being tricked?
Sure. I think it's important for us to ask her. I think that the easy assessment is what is my relationship with my wealth? Right? And sometimes it's not a very easy conversation, but it's just like, okay, what do I feel about money? Okay, if these things are taken away from me, if my car is taken away from me today, if my house is taken away from me today, how will I feel? What is going to happen? Will I be angry at Allah? Because essentially, none of this is mine, right? None of this is mine. Allah has given me permission to use these things. That's it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, just like He gives, He can what? He can take away. So I think me understanding my relationship with wealth is very important. Also, if I'm finding that these are the type of scholars that I'm listening to, like these sellout scholars, right? Or then I need to be like, okay, well, let me listen to others and see what they're saying and see what they're talking about. But if I find myself just kind of hyper-focused on one or two, and I find that I really like this person because all they're doing is validating what I want to do and what I'm feeling. And that happens. And I'm not talking about gravitating toward a scholar because we like how they present something or because how they think or maybe what they're saying resonates more with me. Because those things are very natural and they're good gauges actually on determining who I should listen to and who I shouldn't. But I know what my shahwa is, right? I know what my desires are. And if I find myself listening to this person because I know why I like this person because it agrees with my desires. And I can tell that, right? We can all tell that. Sometimes we wrap it up in different things and sometimes we convince ourselves otherwise. But those honest conversations are the ones that are very important. And like I said, they can be very difficult. I think one of the most difficult conversations to have is actually sitting down and thinking about certain things and my attitude towards certain things and the things that I like and I dislike and coming to the conclusion I don't really like myself. Right? It's difficult. Like I don't like who I am. And that's a tough conversation. But what is the nice thing about that conversation? I can change, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so, and that's a great step toward positivity because if Allah didn't want good for me, what would have happened? I wouldn't even have that clarity. I wouldn't even have that realization. And just the fact that I have that realization means that what? Allah loves me, right? That is a sign that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala loves me. And if I understand that and I'm like, okay, yeah, it sucks. Like, all right, yeah, I'm like a really bad person. Like, you know what I mean? Like, oh man, like I do all these bad things. But I know what my bad things are. And I'm actually really happy that Allah has given me clarity on this and allowed me to see it. Now I need to develop a strategy. And this might involve like talking to someone, right? You might come to seeking counsel and shura from others. But it's like, okay, well, all right, I need to come up with a strategy on how to better myself. Like, man, I'm really a coward. I need to learn how to be more brave. Or like, yeah, man, like I lie. Like I need to learn how to be truthful. I need to learn how to be trustworthy. And these are all, it's amazing like how we can change, like how people can change. Allah has truly given that ability. So what happens with these ulama su is like they actually hide behind the fact that there are some companions who are wealthy. They'll hide behind that and they'll use that as an excuse. They'll use that as an excuse to trick others or trick themselves into seeking wealth in the way that they are. So, what's the relationship of the companions with wealth? Right? It's like, how do we determine? Like, what was happening? If we understand that some of them were they wealthy by accident? No. Like it wasn't an accident that they didn't just walk around like bam, all of a sudden like they had like 20 tons of gold to just show up, right? So what was their relationship with wealth? Like how did they kind of like determine that? Was it something? Did they seek it? No. Not really, right? So and seek is a tricky word, right? Like seek is a very tricky word. And what is it that we mean by that? Because we can say, did they acquire their wealth? Is that a way of expressing it? Did they hoard their wealth? Right? That's another way of expressing that too. Yes?
They got what they needed.
Uh-huh.
But they didn't seek more than that.
So
Do you know
here.
business? There is many
yeah.
ways to be
Sure.
rich.
No, there's many ways to be rich. So I'm saying they definitely acquired their wealth, but if they were rich, wasn't that beyond what they needed? If some of them were rich, and some of them clearly were, wasn't that not beyond what their need is?
Allah bless them. They didn't seek it.
Huh? Okay. So now we're starting to fall into a little bit of a fine line, right? What were they doing?
It depends on the packages.
Okay, there's no doubt. Sometimes Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives certain people more skills than others,
Yeah.
and more intelligence than others, and more ability than others. There's no doubt about that. Yeah. Huh? They were spending, sure. I think rich people. And sometimes that happens, absolutely.
But I think no matter the skill, like Allah might choose to bless somebody, so
That's true. So here, but let's use modern day example. What percentage of Americans are wealthy due to inheritance?
White Americans.
They're the only ones that are wealthy, right?
Suddenly the land become
Yeah.
very expensive and they sell their houses and land.
Sure, no, I'm saying so here, I'm talking about accidental wealth. Somebody picks up a lottery ticket off the ground and it's the winning numbers and he wins $30 million. But I'm saying this accidental wealth, or this, let's see, even inherited wealth, what percentage of people are actually that?
Small percentage.
It's very small. It's like you're talking about like less than 2% of people actually inherit the wealth. Most people who get to wealth is because they actually get wealthy. So again, my question is like so the money just kept coming to them and they didn't make effort?
They put effort there at the same time. They asked for it. They had the blessings of the.
All right.
He had the dua of the Prophet.
So they made effort. I think that's something that we
like he went to the market.
So the effort was made. I think that's something we all agree that they made effort?
He gave all his money.
Yeah, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he gave all his wealth. The Prophet ﷺ gave half. Umar radiallahu anh gave half his wealth. So I'm saying there was an effort that was that was there, but you guys are all touching on important points.
They weren't
The
slaves
intention
to
wasn't to make money.
The intention wasn't to get wealthy, but the result was what? That they got wealthy. The intention was what?
Build for the sake of Allah, for please Allah.
Right. Or to and we had talked about like to sustain, right? Like I am obligated to what? Take care of myself and provide and take care of my family, right? This is my obligation. I have to do that. Because when it came to even their attitude toward wealth, did any of them just be like, nah, you know what, I'm just going to chill here. Being poor is what the Prophet ﷺ wants us to be, so I'm going to make an effort to be poor. No.
And God creates us to work.
Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us to work. There's no doubt. So if we understand that, and I
And not just sit and wait.
Yeah, we don't just sit and wait for risk.
We want to be poor.
That
as well.
this is not how the Prophet ﷺ was. This is not how the companions radiallahu anhu were. But you guys are right. Like there's an effort that was made for this wealth. Now, whether Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blessed that effort or not, that was up to Allah. Right? It was up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It wasn't a decision that they didn't actively make a decision to be wealthy. They made an active decision to provide. And for them, if you had taken away all of that extra wealth, what would happen? They'd still do what they were doing. Yeah, they'd still be happy and they'd still do what they do. And this goes back to the attitude that we had been speaking out in this like entire book, in this entire discussion. It's the attitude toward that wealth. Right? The attachment wasn't there. Right? It just wasn't there. The wealth was always in their hand, not in their hearts. Yes?
But they definitely sought it, right? Like, you can't just...
Sure. No, but what were they seeking? Were they seeking richness, or were they seeking to take care of their needs?
I think they were seeking wealth, but like Miguel said, they weren't...
See, I use my words very pointedly, right? Because wealth is a very broad term. Were they seeking to be wealthy, or were they seeking to fulfill their needs?
Because needs is very limited. Like needs is just food and a home and
Yeah,
a family.
absolutely.
Like, you don't need much. Some of the companions were super wealthy.
So your statements are correct, but have nothing to do with my question.
Were they seeking to fulfill their needs, or were they seeking riches?
To be wealthy, yes.
I think they were seeking to be wealthy.
No, I mean,
Well, most of them failed, unfortunately.
he's saying is they put the effort, just the wealth came, but they weren't like actually looking for it. They were looking to provide daily.
It wasn't, the goal wasn't to become wealthy.
And they are following the book because God said, if you give, something, you get like 10 times.
It's multiplied.
Multiplied.
I'm saying how they dealt with their wealth, we can have, that's a separate conversation, right? You know, when they got money, what did they do with it? They gave it, right? They spent it in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's cause. They invested it. They gave it to others. They helped others, right? They used it in a lot of good ways, right? They gave loans, like they invested, like there's a lot of good. Of course, and there's a lot that they did with their wealth that was good. But I'm saying just that initial attitude that they have. It's like, okay, because one of the things that he'll talk about is that sometimes we will fool ourselves into becoming wealthy, thinking that, okay, I need to become wealthy so that I can be generous. What is the problem with that statement? The attitude.
You can be generous.
I can be generous right now. I don't need to wait until I am rich. Because what will happen? If I have that attitude, what's going to happen when I actually do become wealthy?
You didn't do it while you were here.
If I didn't do it when I was here, why am I going to do it when I get there? Right? I was.
It's less of a sacrifice when you're rich.
Huh?
It's less of a sacrifice.
No, because you know why? Because your heart is more attached because you've reached that point now.
So technically, it's more of a sacrifice.
It's more of a sacrifice when you actually have when you know what I mean, like I mean it's again it's the attitude.
It'll feel like more of a sacrifice.
It'll feel like it, yeah. So this is the story of Abu Dhar, and this is basically the attitude the Messenger of Allah ﷺ had and the attitude that Abu Dhar had. So what is happening here? He was walking with the Prophet ﷺ one day in the neighborhoods of Medina, and they saw Uhud. And the Prophet ﷺ said, Abu Dhar. And Abu Dhar responded, he said, at your command, O Messenger of Allah. He said, Labbaik, alaykum salam. He said, I would not like to have gold equal to this mountain of Uhud unless nothing of it, not even a single dinar of it, remains with me for more than 3 days, except something which I will keep for repaying debts. So who's speaking here? The Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ. And basically, what is he saying? He's saying that if this mountain was turned into gold, what would I do? I would give it all away. That's what he's saying. And I would spend all of it, and I would distribute it, and I would have given it to Allah's slaves. Then the Prophet ﷺ pointed out with his hand toward his right, his left, and his back, meaning he was pointing to all of Uhud, right, the entire mountain. It's a pretty big mountain. And then he proceeded with his walk and said, the rich are in fact the poor, meaning that the ones who have money in this world are actually poor on the day of resurrection, except those who spend their wealth like this, and who give it for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's sake. And like this, to their right, left, back. But such people are few in number. That most people who have wealth they're not generous. Most people who have wealth are not generous. So, taking from this, is there essentially a problem with wealth? No, it's not. What is the problem? I'm sorry? Right, hoarding is the problem. Like in hoarding, it stems from that initial thing we were talking about, is that relationship that I have with it. Right? So if I'm hoarding and this relationship that I have with that wealth is a problem, that's where it becomes a problem, that's where it becomes an issue. But then he said to me, he said, stay here. He said to Abu Dhar, he's like, stay here, don't move, I'll be back. Then he went into the darkness until he went out of sight, and then I heard a loud voice, and I was afraid something happened to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I wanted to go, but I didn't. Why? Because he commanded me to stay. So I remained until he came back. And he said, Messenger of Allah, I heard a voice and I was afraid. Like I heard this loud voice and I was afraid. And he mentioned to him what he heard. So the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, did you hear it? And I replied, yes, I did. He said, that was Jibreel. That was Jibreel. He came to me and he said, whoever died without joining others in worship with Allah will enter paradise. And he ﷺ asked Jibreel, even if he had committed theft or committed zina, Jibreel said yes, even if he had committed theft or committed zina. So in Muhasibi, he goes on, he's like, okay, well, what about us? You know, what about us and our attitude? And he said that you can't use the companion as a comparison, right? It doesn't apply. And why doesn't it apply? Because Abdurrahman ibn Auf, he used his wealth to do good, he gave it in Allah's cause. He was in the presence of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So being in his presence, it caused him to do what? It encouraged him to do good, right? Because he saw the living example of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he himself was given glad tidings of paradise, right? So which encouraged him even more to do good with his wealth. And he was given this position because his acquiring and spending was out of true piety and virtue. He gave it in charity, etc. And Muhasibi, he uses some weak hadith to justify this, but he said that he still won't enter paradise before the poor muhajirin. Yes?
More hadith about Abdurrahman. Aisha who said, I heard the Prophet said Abdurrahman is not who crawled into Jannah. And then when he came into Mecca, Medina with 700 camels, and then
I'll check the narration, inshallah. I don't remember the story. Yeah.
Aisha Radhiyallahu anha said Abdurrahman ibn Auf will crawl into Jannah because of all the wealth, and then Abdurrahman ibn Auf came and asked Aisha Radhiyallahu, did you say that?
Yeah.
Yes, I heard him say that. And in that case, everything.
He gave everything.
Away.
Fi sabilillah, subhanallah. Allah Akbar.
He said, I'm not going to come, I'm going to run.
So again, it's just that this idea, this is
the way that he thought about it.
I'm saying, like, he didn't care, right? He had all this wealth, and it didn't make a difference to him.
The camels was full.
Yeah, subhanallah. And he's saying that wealth only entices what? Extravagance. It entices boasting. It entices your desires. And there's a huge difference between us and the companions, right? They strove, acquired, spent. They gave in charity. They had taqwa. They were constantly aware. And the best of them, they did live well, right? There's no doubt about that, right? They did live well. They were happy with what they had. They had qana'ah, right? They had contentment, which is something that's really important. They only took what was needed, and they were patient with the things that they didn't have. And whenever the world looked upon them, they would actually get upset. They would get upset and they would be sad. And when they turned away from them, they would say, this is actually the sign of piety. And they were upset when they had and happy when they didn't. So when they had a lot of wealth, they would actually be upset. And when it was taken away, that's when they would actually be happiest. And their virtues is like, it's just, they're just amazing people, right? They're just amazing people. But subhanAllah. He said, versus us, right? So that's the companions. They're like, we tend to transgress when we're given wealth. We tend to be insolent when we're comfortable. We tend to be pleased when we're affluent. We forget to be thankful. We're anxious during hardship. We crumble under pressure. We're unhappy with what we're given. We fear and we hate poverty. Right? We really fear and we hate poverty. And and he uses this ayah. He says, أَذْهَبْتُمْ طَيِّبَاتِكُمْ فِي حَيَاتِكُمُ الدُّنْيَا وَاسْتَمْتَعْتُمْ بِهَا. He said, you squandered the good things when you were given in your earthly life, and you took your fill of pleasure there. Meaning that all you cared about was this world. So he said, whoever seeks this world for hoarding and pride will meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala angry. So he says here, So he says here, this is Imam he says, do you prefer this world or being seated next to Allah or to meet Him? And he says, you'll be sorry for the lost opportunity. I called this section spiritual blackmail. In a good way. you know, when you present something like this, it just, like when I read it, I was like, this is so ridiculous. Like nobody nobody would actually, you know, truly believe that. But can this happen momentarily? Yeah, for sure, right? And this is what we call ghafla. And when we talk about like that heedlessness, like that momentary lapse of taqwa, this is what this is, yeah, right? And this is what he's addressing. I don't think there's actually anybody who'd be like, nah, bro, the dunya is better, right? Allah protect us. But he says, isn't it natural to feel that sometimes, right? Isn't it natural to feel like, you know, that, like the draw of this world? So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, whoever loves this world and is pleased with it, the fear of the next leaves his heart. The scholars say you are upset over what you lose in this world, which will one day crucify you. The companions in general, they were more abstinent in those things that were permitted than you are with those that are not. They said basically there's like their attitude toward things that are mubah are better than our attitude is toward things that are haram. Allah protect us.
So one of the slides before you said like they would meet Allah angry. They like see
No, Allah is anger.
Allah's angry.
Yeah.
Allah is angry.
Yeah. They will meet Allah and He's angry. While Allah is angry. Yeah. So he gives another example. He's like, it's better to avoid one doubtful gold coin. So if I find a coin, I don't know where it is or whose it is. He's like, it's better to avoid that than to actually give 1,000 in charity. Why? Because of that caution that's required. And he's like, well, the wealth changes an individual's heart, and that worry is something that's real and something that we should all be aware of. And we shouldn't fool ourselves into thinking that we'll gather wealth to give in charity, right? Like, and we had talked about this. Right? If I don't have that attitude now, what makes me think that I'm going to have that attitude later? He brings another, so this is a story that's in Tabarani. It's about this ayah. It says, فَأُولَٰئِكَ مَعَ الَّذِينَ عَنَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِمْ مِنَ النَّبِيِّينَ وَالصِّدِّيقِينَ وَالشُّهَدَاءَ وَالصَّالِحِينَ وَحَسُنَ أُولَٰئِكَ رَفِيقًا. He said, we'll be among those He has blessed, the messengers, the truthful, those who bear witness to the truth, and the righteous. What excellent companions these are. And he closes with that, and that is the end quote. This is the end of his quote from Hadith al-Muhasibi. He goes on to share a couple more narrations, and from them is this: وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ عَهَدَ اللَّهُ لَإِنْ آتَانَا مِنْ فَضْلِهِ لَنَصَدَّقَنَّ وَلَنَكُونَنَّ مِنَ الصَّالِحِينَ فَلَمَّا آتَاهُمْ مِنْ فَضْلِهِ بَخِلُوا بِهِ وَتَوَلَّوْا وَهُمْ مُعْرِضُونَ فَعَاقَبَهُمْ نِفَاقًا فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ إِلَى يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ بِمَا أَخْلَفُوا اللَّهُ مَا وَعَدُوهُ وَبِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. And amongst them are those who made a covenant with Allah, saying, if He bestows upon us of His bounty, we would certainly give alms, and we would truly be of the righteous. Sound familiar? Right. Yeah, Allah, if you give me, I will be righteous and I will be generous. Yet, when He gave them of His bounty, they hoarded it and turned it away averse. So He put as a consequence hypocrisy into their hearts until the day when they shall meet Him, because they broke their covenant with Allah and because they lied. Concerning this verse, there is a story of Tha'laba ibn Hatib. He asked the Prophet ﷺ to give him wealth, and then the Prophet ﷺ made dua and He made him wealthy, and then he withdrew from Medina. He actually moved out of Medina because of how large his flock had become and how sheep, he came less frequently to the salah, and when it was time for zakat, he refused to pay it. So he finally came one day, and he gave to him, and he said, woe to Tha'laba, and the above verses were revealed. Tha'laba, he brought the zakat to the Prophet ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ refused to take it. He brought it to Abu Bakr. When he was the Khalifa, Abu Bakr refused to take it. He brought it to Umar, and he refused to take it. This hadith is in Tabarani, and he died during the Khilafah of Uthman. So what can we benefit from this story?
Be thankful for what Allah has put you to.
Sure.
Because I think like the Talaba, he came asked multiple times.
Yeah.
And that's Allah says, this what your state, where you at is
Where you're, absolutely. Like we don't know what's good for us, right?
You simply don't know what's
And I think that's the benefit we can take from the ayah, right? I have no problem taking the benefit from the ayah, but the problem I have with the story is there's not a whole lot I can I can take from the story, and there are a couple of reasons. Tha'laba ibn Hatib, he was a Badri companion. He fought at Badr. So the Prophet ﷺ dealing with him in this way, it doesn't make sense. And Ibn Hajar Iraqi, they say this story is weak. Like they're like, no, this never happened. This actually never happened. But does that not mean that I cannot benefit from the ayah? Right? The verse is very clear, and it's actually very representative of that same idea and that same concept. Right? Don't ask for something that you are not ready for. And you can ask for it, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decides whether He is going to grant it or not. And if I want a characteristic, when should I start practicing that characteristic? Now. So the Prophet ﷺ, even saying all that, the Prophet ﷺ still preferred poverty for himself and his family. Right? This is known. This is not something that was hidden. It's something that he preferred. Why? To be an example. Okay. Well, he can't be an example when he's rich.
You want to show that was preferred?
Okay. Here. Can everybody be rich?
No.
Can everybody be poor?
Yeah.
Yes. No. Yes, right? So, by being poor, he has become a what? A more encompassing example. The other thing is, when you're rich or you acquire wealth, what negative thoughts can be assumed for the Prophet ﷺ? And hasha, of course, he's above this. But if we assumed he was wealthy, what would happen? Right now, the way they attack the Prophet ﷺ is when he's poor, right? How would they be able to attack him if he was wealthy? Right? Oh, he just did it to what? To amass wealth. He wasn't sincere.
Or spread the religion.
Or whatever, right? Like, oh, he just bribed people. But by being poor, you've actually closed a number of doors. And even that's his relationship with outsiders, even within the Muslim community themselves. When the companions, they saw that their messenger and their prophet was poor, there's less financial incentive for them to follow him, correct? And did he ever ask them for money? He was poor in a position where had he asked, what would have happened? They would have given him everything, and when he went to give it back, what would they do? They wouldn't even take it, and they wouldn't accept it. So it was a sign for the companions immediately, and for us, being generations later, of the sincerity of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that he truly only had the religious goal for his companions in the ummah. He didn't care about these worldly things. That's it. It's one story, but I'll share it with you guys next week, inshallah. But alhamdulillah, we reached the end of book 27. No, can you guys fold up the chairs?